in the modern world, race became an organizing principle for the modern world, right? Like when Lipset dealt with that in that book on whiteness, he said, hey, what's been your anti-Semitism and racism? He said, well, you know, both these are evil and things like that, but one is actually reorganizing the whole world, right? So it's going to be complicated. It's going to reorganize the whole world and trying to impose that identity on the world, but it's basically reorganizing the whole world around racial lines for oppressive reasons, right? And you know, obviously that, so there was a white imagination about that kind of racial oppression, and they put these odd identities on a lot of different people, right? So thus we come up with this hodgepodge of identities saying blackness as opposed to this imposed identity, and trying to breathe some new meaning into it as something that has some dignity and wholeness to it. But anyway, so but the Haitian Revolution has been widely read out of world history, right? We talk about the Age of Revolution, we hardly mention Haiti, even though it's central to that whole issue. And I would put people like in that period, the whole Ethiopian movement, Harriet Tubman, David Walker. We could do the roll call there. But there wouldn't be abolitionism if there wasn't for the Haitian Revolution, right? There wouldn't be in America, actually, right? The whole Louisiana Purchase and stuff like that comes out of Haitian. So it's a transformative thing. And the power of Cold War whiteness in the scholastic world is that we don't even see that. Right? It's not even in the textbook. You probably, if you talk about the revolution you know the least about, it's the Haitian Revolution. Right? I mean, that's the damage that's done, right? Why? Because that master narrative is trying to drown out that history of resistance. You're not supposed to know about that, right? So, post-Cold War, we call this post-Cold War whiteness paradigm we're trying to come up with is, and by that I mean that we know now that the universities were reshaped by the Cold War to exclude certain narratives of American identity and things like that, right? And so we're just rediscovering a lot of things, and basically it's isolated and disrupted a long black tradition of what we call Africana studies, Pan-Africanism, things like that, and demoted that to a trivial subject, right? So now, so most of us who did studies of Pan-Africanism, we had to do it outside the academy in the beginning. I never had a book about Marcus Garvey when I was in school. Right, I had to read that on my own. Nation of Islam, I had to read that on my own. Malcolm X, I read that on my own, right? So we were outside. But now what we're announcing is that now we're on the inside struggling around this issue. We have a sufficient number of scholars around the world have reached a consensus that these are global issues. We know now that the Cold War propped up journals, academic journals and professorships to promote one version of Cold War history that African people didn't have anything in common and all that. And now that that's gone, a lot of those journals fell, we started to realize. So now people in the Africana studies, even African studies, those conferences have been having a lot of meetings about what would be a post-Cold War paradigm. And part of that discussion, Michael West and William Martin are part of that discussion. I'm glad they introduced this whole issue of the black event. Rod Bush is working in this. And I think that Wallerstein's paradigm is important in this whole discussion, and including internal colonialism and whatnot. So let me deal with this. So in this book that Michael West, I hope you've seen this book and get your hands on it. It's a very important book. It starts with a black woman named Rebecca Prosser. I don't know if you heard about this. And if I get from Tucson to Tupac. Okay. Reed Martin, one or the other. Okay. The last one. There we go. So from Tucson to Tupac. So it starts out with it's a very interesting article by Sylvia Fry. Is it Frey or Fry? Frey. Who I was one of the reviewers for the book, so I kind of got the preview early, and it was very exciting to see it. Introducing characters that we really didn't talk about before, who is kind of one of the pioneers of black Protestantism, and showing that basically with the slave trade shattering the traditional African identities, if we call it that people created these fixed kinship identities in the church. And 70% of these churches in the beginning were women, and they created sisterhoods, right? That I think, I'll do a cartoon version of it. Basically, if slavery, you're saying they're telling you you're slaves because you're cursed by God. Her reinterpretation was, hey, Jesus loves us and he wants you to break your chains. And they put her on trial for that. It wasn't a popular notion at the time. But that's one of the roots of this whole of transnational identity, right? She lays out that if you look at Equiano's memoir there, his autobiography, he has many different nationalities. He's a slave in many different languages and things like that. So it's a transnational identity from the very beginning, which goes to your question. It's always been complicated from the root, multilingual, multinational from the very beginning. It's a very complicated identity. And I think when we do these analyses, race is always a congested concept, right? It's congested. So you have to unpack the meaning, right? It'll say black, it'll say Negro, it'll say brown, beautiful, or something like that. It's your job in each case to unpack the meaning. What is the gender dimensions, the class dimensions, all those dimensions that are part of that.